The first November 1954 revolution was not an ex nihilo event. It is the culmination of an epic of unyielding armed resistance against the European French colonizer and whose fact leaders' history were written in letters of God, starting with the modern Algerian state resurrector, Emir Abdel Qadir, the hero of the Battle of Sikkak, Sidi Ibrahim, and others, and the first to establish with his high morals in the treatment of prisoners what will be known as international law. Going through Ahmed Bey, the leader of the resistance in eastern Algeria, and his great heroism, especially in the siege of Constantine I and II in 1836-1837, and the terrible battles fought by resistant leaders such as Sheikh Bouamama in the southwest of Algeria, Sheikh Zardoud in the northwest of Algeria, Sheikh Sadiq Arab and Lala Fatima Soumer in the country of Zouawa, Sheikh Hasnawi in the east of Algeria, and Sheikh Ammar bin Gnida in the region of Bissa. All were epics of armed struggle that did not stop from 1830 until the beginning of the 20th century. European French colonial armies had carried out second-to-none horrific genocide against the Algerians. Its first Holocaust in history was committed in the Dahra region, when entire tribes were besieged in caves. They were set on fire and smoke. Up until now, one can smell its odor. When this army lose in battlefield, they amused themselves with ripping women's bellies, filling barrels with cut-off Algerian ears, and utilizing poisonous gas against oases like Laghouat and Ingal. They destroyed the zawiyas and mosques with artillery, as happened to the Zawiya of Sidi Abid in the region of Tbissa. The crimes of France's colonial armies are countless and best described by their own perpetrators' reports. The occupation of Algeria being completed at the beginning of the 20th century, nationalist parties as well as religious reformist associations emerged, including the Najm Shamal Afriqiya, North African Star, founded in 1926 and dissolved in 1936, the Algerian People's Party, founded in 1937 and dissolved due to the explicit call of his leaders Misal al-Hajj for their independence, and took another form, namely the Movement for the Dictionary of Democratic Freedoms in 1946, MTLB, and last but not least, the Algerian Scholars Associations, founded by Sheikh Ibn Badis in 1931. With its strongholds being crushed by Germany during the First and Second World Wars, France resorted to recruiting Algerians to liberate it and promised to consider their demands for freedom and independence. The latter did well in defeating Nazism and liberating France at a time when French Vichy government was actively collaborating with Nazis. Not only France did not keep its promises after the Allied victory, but requited favors with ingratitude and criminality. Came out on May 8, 1945, in a peaceful demonstration to express their joy at the victory of the Allies. They were confronted by the French military and civilian forces with their machine guns and cannons in Sétif, Galma and Kharata. In a few weeks, more than 45,000 were martyred. These massacres caused an irreversible rupture between French colonial administration and the Algerians, who became deeply convinced that what was forcibly taken could only be regained by force. In February 1947, a special organization was established and tasked with preparing for an all-out armed revolution. However, the OSS was soon discovered and dissolved in March 1950. Its members were imprisoned. From the latter emerged the Revolutionary Committee for Unity and Action in April 1954, which gave rise to the Group of 22 in June 1954. From the Group of 22, the Algerian Revolution Council was established. It was composed of 6 leaders and founders of the National Liberation Front, FLN, who met in October 1954 and decided to launch the Algerian Revolution. Algeria is divided into 6 military zones, and the famous November 1st statement was drafted and issued, announcing the outbreak of the revolution. The leaders were Mustafa Boulaid, commander of the 1st Wilaya, Oras Mamsha, Idoush Mourad, commander of the 2nd Wilaya, Northern Constantine, Karim Bouqasem, commander of the 3rd Wilaya, Kabylia, Rabah Bitat, commander of the 4th Wilaya, Central Algeria, Mohamed Al-Arabi bin Hidi, commander of the 5th Wilaya, Wahran, and Mohamed Boudiaf as coordinator of the revolution between domestic and activities abroad. epoch of the liberation revolution, which cannot be perfectly captured in books, have tired researchers and historians, including the Great Battle of Al-Jurf in the First Wilaya, which took place in Tbilisi on September 22, 1955, lasted for 8 days and was led by the martyr Shihani Bashir at the head of 300 mujahideen armed with simple weapons against thousands of French soldiers and their lethal weapons, who used napalm and poisonous gases, but left hundreds of deaths on the battlefield, which ended in a hand-to-hand combat with daggers and rifle bayonets. This great battle is still studied in international military colleges. The epics of the First Wilaya are famous and innumerable, including the battles of Ergou, Jbal Labyad, Jbal Sif, al-Kamakim, Zarif al-Wa'ar, Ghifuf, Bouramli, and other combats which took place in the Tunisian territory itself. The attacks of August 20, 1955 in the Second Wilaya, led by the martyr Zurut Yusuf, were comprehensive popular attacks launched against all colonial centers. The reaction of the French forces was so barbaric that the bodies of the Algerians were carried by bulldozers and buried in mass pits. The August 20 attacks internationalized the revolution and lifted the siege on the First Wilaya. The battles of the Eastern Base, Qaida al-Sharqiyya, La Base de l'Est, and the most famous of all is the Great Battle of Subhras from April 28, 1958 to May 1, 1958, was one of the fiercest border battle against the electrified Babad, which was surrounding Algeria. It was led by heroic commanders of Eastern Base battalions, Martyr Yusuf Lakhtrash and Muhammad Lakhdar Sirin, and lasted 7 days over an area of 50 square kilometers, in which French forces used all the elite regiments and all types of weapons, including naval ships. 800 mujahideens were martyred, an entire parachutist battalions were destroyed, and senior French army officers were killed, ending in a hand-to-hand combat with bayonets. Wilaya battles, among the most notable was the resistance against the disastrous and failed Opération Jumelle 1959-1960, which aimed at destroying the Third Wilaya and capturing Colonel Amirouche. The Fourth Wilaya battles, the most famous of which is the Great Bouzegza epic from August 4 to 12, 1957, in which Commando Ali Khoja and units of local fighters heavily confronted the massive army led by 3 generals headed by General Massoud himself. Algiers battle taking place in Algiers between 1956 and 1958 and opposing the French army and the fighters of the National Liberation Army, who conducted guerrilla warfare. The French side responded with brutal repression and later with terrorist attacks carried out by the Secret Army Organization, founded by supporters of French Algeria from both military and civilian sectors. The OIS heinous crimes had no effect on the determination of the Algerians to achieve independence. Of the Fifth Wilaya, with the numerous fierce confrontations between NLA and the French colonial forces, guerrilla warfare, ambushes and raids were practiced by the Algerian fighter due to the lack of equipment and the imbalance of power. Among its most notable events was the Sbabna operation on February 19, 1956, which became a model for the development of revolutionary activity in its first stage within this wilaya. The battles of the Sixth Wilaya, most notably the Battle of Barkouk, July 1958, led by Colonel Sid Hawass, the Battle of Jebel Thamar, 1959, and the Battle of Jebel Boukhil, September 1961, which lasted 48 hours against a large-scale French attack supported by the aircraft, artillery, and tanks. The battles of the Seventh Wilaya, which refer to a large-scale commando operations carried out by the NLA within French territories between 1954 and 1962, collecting funds from Algerian immigrants and recruiting. In conclusion, what distinguished the victorious November 1954 revolution is the rejection of compromise, the continuation of the fight until independence was achieved. No negotiations on the revolution's weapons, no ceding of a single inch of the Algerian soul, no acceptance of limited sovereignty. Independence was not a gift, but something seized through struggle, paid for with blood. Benefits of November 1954 revolution were both immediate and far-reaching. The immediate impact in the Maghreb was the acceleration of the independence of Morocco and Tunisia, respectively on March 2nd and March 20, 1956. France concentrated all its forces on Algeria to avoid overstretching and multiple fronts, while the war in Algeria went unabated until 1962. Had not been the November 1954 revolution, said Hadi Boukouche, the former Tunisian Prime Minister, Tunisia would have gained full sovereignty over its territory only after 10 years, as provided for by the Franco-Tunisian Agreement in Internal Autonomy. As for Morocco, full independence was not entirely on the table, and France intended to completely exclude King Mohammed V from the rule of Morocco in exchange for a decent life in France, both for him and his family. Thanks to the great August 20, 1955 attacks in northern Constantine and the Algerians carried out in solidarity with Morocco and its people, France was forced to reconsider its plan regarding this neighboring country. The whole of Africa fell into the hands of colonialism, and when Algeria returned, the whole of Africa returned. Since its independence in 1962, Algeria had adopted a foreign policy based on the principles of justice, fairness, and supporting just causes, foremost among them the Palestinian cause and the liberation issue in Africa. It supported the Arab countries against Zionist expansionist aggressions during the 1967 and 1973 wars, contributed to resolving conflicts between countries through its well-known mediation, and advocated for the establishment of a new world order that is fair and more respectful of the peoples of the Third World. Palestinian issue. Algeria hosted the 7th Arab Summit in 1974 and recognized the Palestinian Liberation Organization (PLO) as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, and Tunisia support the Palestinian struggle openly. The Palestinian Council was convened on the Algerian soil in 1988, at a time when all Arab states refrained from hosting it, and the establishment of the Palestinian state was announced in the capital, Algiers. Algeria continues to provide political and material support to the Palestinians at a various level and advocates for this cause in all international forums. Revolution in Africa. Algeria supported all national liberation movements in our African countries, providing training centers for their fighters and refuge for their leaders, such as Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo from South Africa, Samora Machel from Mozambique, Agostinho Neto from Angola, and Amilcar Cabral from Guinea-Bissau, who referred to Algeria as the Mecca of revolutionaries. The late Nelson Mandela declared in 1990, "Algeria made me a man, and I there received my military training."
Algeria is my country.
Algeria hosted many conferences aimed at supporting the rights of the people to achieve self-determination, such as the Second Afro-Asian Conference held in 1965. Thanks to this support, Resolution 435/78, calling for Nelson Mandela release, was adopted. In fulfillment of its duty towards Africa, Algeria considered all deaths of African countries in 2013. Algeria has not forgotten the support of Arabs, Muslims, and free people of the world extending to its revolution. It sided with Egypt in the 1967 war and played a pivotal role in achieving victory in October 1973 war, in which Algeria participated with 3 armored divisions, a mechanized infantry division, a field artillery regiment, an anti-aircraft artillery regiment, 4 support battalions, a squadrons of MiG-21 jet fighters, 2 MiG-14 squadrons, and the Sukhoi 7 squadrons, with a total of about 50 warplanes. Late Houari Boumediene placed all airports and military commands at the disposal of the brotherly Egyptian military commands after he gave Egypt a blank check with which to buy whatever weapons it wanted and addressed the Algerian forces, saying, "A part of our nation is being under aggression, so go and defend it, and you have only two options, victory or martyrdom." The crossing of the Suez Canal was done using a single bridge battalion that Egypt obtained from Algeria, whose forces contributed to the victory, especially after the Battle of Al-Adabiya, in which the Algerians inflicted an overwhelming defeat on Sharon's arrogant army and teach them a painful lesson after he promised to crush the Arabs with his tanks. The Algerian fighters neutralized 900 Zionist soldiers and destroyed 200 tanks, causing thereby what was later known as the Sharon Complex. The emerging Algerian diplomacy and its achievements. In addition to the above, Algeria advocated for the advent of a new world order based on equality, defended the interests of the Third World Bloc, rallied support for China's candidacy for membership in the United Nations Security Council in 1971, and supported the non-aligned movement by hosting its fourth summit in Algiers in September 1973. It also played a key role in resolving crisis through successful mediation. Among the most notable fruits of this efficacious mediation were the Algiers Agreement signed on March 6, 1975, which ended the war between Iran and Iraq, the Algiers Agreement signed on January 19, 1981, which led to the release of the American hostages in Tehran, with US President Jimmy Carter thanking Algeria for its effective mediation. The Algiers Agreement signed on December 12, 2000, which ended the border war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. The Algiers Agreement signed on May 15, 2015, which ended conflicts among warring parties in Mali and was considered as a key step in supporting stability in the region of the Sahel. Diplomatic achievements were recognized by both friends and foes alike. They become a model to be followed in the future negotiations. Moreover, through its membership in an international organization, Algeria seeks to promote economic cooperation and sustainable development in the African continent and the Islamic world, and it works to promote human rights and combat discrimination and violence. Today, Algerian diplomacy, as chartered by President of the Republic Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune and implemented by the Algerian diplomatic apparatus led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has succeeded in turning the year 2024 into a pivotal phase in the path of enhancing its international standing while adhering to its historical constant that define the features of its foreign policy, as Minister Attaf affirmed. And this is happening amid the growth of and escalation of conflicts, disputes, and wars in unprecedented international atmosphere since the Cold War. As a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, Algeria has contributed to addressing the issues presented before the UN body by upholding the principles of international law and legitimacy during a period dominated by dangerous trends of excessive use of force as an option imposed by the strong upon the weak, leaving the latter with no refuge to seek justice and protect themselves. This trend includes the enshrining of an open violation of international law and the trampling on international legitimacy without accountability or oversight as means of asserting dominance and imposing tyranny on others, and neutralization of international organizations, primarily the UN, and weakening their role, paving the way for a new era marked by introversion, the supremacy of subjectivity, and unilateralism. In pursuance of the instructions of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Algerian diplomacy has adopted a roadmap for Algeria's tenure at the Security Council based on the following main pillars: working to ensure that Algeria is always the Arab and African voice at the Security Council, advocating for the concerns and issues of Arab and African countries and peoples, and defending their aspirations and ambitions with full honesty and sincerity. Algeria's efforts have been praised worldwide. Supporting just causes, foremost among them the Palestinian issue and the Western Sahara issue. Defending the national rights firmly established by international legitimacy in favor of both causes. Since Algeria's accession to the Security Council, Algerian diplomacy has been behind all initiatives aimed at keeping the spotlight on the Palestinian cause at all times. It has submitted numerous draft resolutions and statements to curb Israeli aggression on Gaza, and it has also reintroduced the issue of full membership of the State of Palestine in the United Nations on its rightful basis as an integral part of the requirements of the two-state solution enshrined by international legitimacy to achieve a just, lasting, and final peace in the Middle East. Regarding the standing of the Zionist aggression to Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Yemen, Algeria has not hesitated to coordinate with all these brotherly countries in fully fulfilling of its duties as the only Arab member of the Security Council. Algeria's position concerning the issue of Western Sahara, both inside and outside the Security Council, draws its strength from historical constants that are indisputable or cannot be misconstrued. Working to make Algeria a positive power of suggestion that contributes to bridging rifts and divisions among the permanent members within the Security Council, Algeria has largely succeeded in this endeavor by helping to unify the voice and influence of the group of 10 elected countries. Today, Algeria is more than ever stronger with its leadership, people, and capabilities. Long live our Algeria forever, free and proud. It was me, Dr. Mahmoud Brahim, the ambassador of Algeria. Thank you very much for your kind attention.